everybody above you is usually trying to pull you up, and the ones that are below you are trying to pull you down. So get people above you and reach out to them. 9 out of 10 will try to help you that I've ever found. And I think that's the biggest thing that separates success and failure is learning from others. If you had to jump in, imagine, you go to school, you have coaches, you have teachers, you have parents, all trying to teach you stuff faster and better ways than they did it.
You know those days when you wake up and you're so excited to get everything done, you're like fired up. Obviously, you and I had a good weekend, and then everything is just conspiring against you. Like I went to go drop off the U-Haul trailer. The thing was closed. It's supposed to be open at 8. It was closed at 8:30. The little robo-vac that cleans my house came in and tried to vacuum up all of my cables and cords and just unplugged everything. So I had to plug all that back in. You and I try to jump on technology issues. It's like, damn, you just want to get stuff done. And
I'm actually glad. I'm glad it's a little bit because this is my first ever, remote podcast. And so I'm like, oh, dude, this isn't going to go well. So I'm glad you're having some technical difficulties because we are as well. So,
well, it was funny because I sent you that link.
That's a good thing.
It is. It's good. You just got to plow through it. But I sent you that link last week and you're like, what do I do? How do I sign up? I'm like, just follow the link. And then Ricky this morning messages me and he's like, hey, I'm going to Riverside. And I'm like, just follow the link. But I know what it's like.
Overthink it.
Oh, it is. And I know what it's like to get started. And I mean, to your guys' credit, you want to make sure it's done right and it's professional. Right. I think too many people, they don't really think about that. They just go and they don't really show up in a powerful way. They don't create this level of exceptionalism that I know you guys do. So as much as I was busting your guys' balls about just follow the link, I also appreciate your desire to do it right because a lot of people just aren't like that.
Yeah, I think there's two faults. One is people try to just jump into it and half-ass it, and then there's the other ones who overthink it and never start. Up at your event this weekend, I had a lot of conversations with gentlemen that want to, do things. They're like, I want to, expand my potential. And I'm like, start. And they're like, but I'm not ready yet. This isn't in place. This isn't in place. And it's like, it's never going to be perfect, man. So you kind of got to walk that line of trying to do your best, but at the same time, you got to jump at some point.
Yeah. Why do you think people do that? Because that's not my personality, and I don't think it's your personality either. That's probably part of the reason that you and I get along so well. But you're right. There are a lot of people who will say, I'm not ready. I don't know if I've ever said that. I may have thought it, but it's never kept me back from actually doing the thing that I have a desire to do.
Yeah, I think you're a testament to that because a lot of your podcasts talk about how, I don't have this figured out. I'm still on the path. And that's what I think people don't realize is when you start a business, when I started my first company, it was a wood mill in Mexico. And now it's 4 different companies in Utah. It's expanded into something I never, ever could have imagined. And, to try to think that I'm going to be this at the start was impossible. So you kind of got to just go and follow your gut and try to make good decisions and be educated and always educate. Just like with jiu-jitsu, we did jiu-jitsu this weekend at your event for the first time I've ever done it. And it just changed the way and it's weird because it just changed the way I look at like even just everyday problems. It's just, I was nervous. It's like, this is scary. I've never done anything like this. And then but you guys you and Kip made us feel comfortable that it's like, you're not supposed to know it. Just get on the ground and start rolling and just, you just got to start.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of perfectionism. People want to be perceived as perfect. There's definitely a level of procrastination involved with that. People just drag it on. But at the end of the day, like you said, you just got to start somewhere and realize, hey, I can grow and I can build and I can develop. But it's also very intimidating when you see somebody like Kip. We'll take that jiu-jitsu example. And I actually looked at you a couple of times when he was teaching techniques. There was a sweep that he was teaching. The star sweep, I believe, is what he was teaching. And it was interesting because I looked at you and you were shaking your head like, what in the world is this? But then Kip, 30 seconds later, said, this is one of the more basic sweeps. Did you hear him say that? This is one of the more basic sweeps.
And it was like, yeah.
It's just interesting the
like
level
magic,
of where people,
you know, the way it's like, how did he go from the bottom to the top of that guy in 2 moves? And he even breaks it down, you know, and jiu-jitsu is so scary. That's what I learned, is it is terrifying. I was even watching you when you were, giving us the lesson with Kip. And it's like, you know, don't drop your arm like this to do the headlock, because now you can get into an arm bar.
Right.
And I'm like, how do you ever know that? You know, but again, somebody that's starting a business, it's like, well, how do you know to watch out for that pitfall? And it's like, I've been put in an arm bar because of that move. You know, it's like I didn't make the sale, or I lost the employee because of that move. So don't do it again. You know, and it's just, I love life. I love those kinds of things. You've always told me, get into jiu-jitsu. It's not just fighting. It's not just rolling around, you know, with guys. It's like chess. And I love business and those kinds of challenges. And so it was really eye-opening.
Yeah. Do you think that because you own, how many companies do you own? Do you know at this point? That's the real question.
Yeah, I actually try to count. It's about a dozen, but I've sold 4 or 5. So I own 6 right now, but I've started 12, I believe.
So when you have those failures, and I'm sure you have, it's not like you started 12 companies and they all just excelled and everything was great and wonderful and just, you know, blissful. When you start those, how do you perceive failure? Because you're somebody who gets a lot done. You're somebody who's been ultra successful personally and professionally. But I also know, because we've been friends for a long time, that not everything has gone smoothly. So what is your perception of failure, and how do you manage missed expectations?
You know, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, like, you know, I lost everything in the recession. So I've had the ultimate failure. You know, I mean, I lost my home, my cars, everything from it was my second business at the time. And, you know, I had a lot of people around me saying, I'm never going to go into business again. I'm never going to try that again. And I thought, my brain just never thought to stop. It just, you know, I was like, I don't play a lot of sports, but I compare a lot of things to sports. And it's like the guy who's the baseball player who, you know, swings the first pitch and misses the ball. He doesn't just say, well, I'm out. He swings again, and he swings again, probably strikes out, goes home, goes to the batting cages. You know, you see these baseball players' averages, and again, I don't know baseball that well, but from what I understand, some of the best baseball players in the world have like a 300 batting average, right?
Right.
So that's 3 out of 10. Is that right?
Correct.
They get on base 3 out of 10 times.
Well, not just on base.
And they're the best
batting
in the world.
averages, they only hit the ball for a base hit or greater 3 out of 10 times.
And it's like, those are the greatest. Those are like Babe Ruth, from what I understand, and people like that, you know. And it's like, you know, I just don't. I think people take that when they fail, I think they take it that, you know, it's over. And I've never looked at it like that. I look at it like I've failed. I'm going to learn, change my grip, change my stance, and swing again. And I think that comes a lot with, like you said, not caring what people think. That's been, you know, not just natural. But as I get older, it's a lot easier. But I think a lot of people, you know, you get on base. I'm sure you played baseball. And when you first got up on base your first time, I'm sure you were thinking not, you know, I hope I hit this ball for me. I hope I hit this for my, you know, my parents or my mom or my
team,
friends, you know, everybody watching, the team. And as you get older, it's like, you know, you still want to hit it for the team, but for me now it's more about, you know, for me and my family and my growth. And I think when you can start shaking off, you know, failure in the eyes of others, I think it just starts, you know, we're all going to fail. I mean, that's life, you know, and so like going into jiu-jitsu, when I go in, I think I'm going to fail at this probably for a couple months. I'm just going to get my ass kicked. Why would I think, I have a son, my oldest boy, who will go into sports and think I'm going to be the best. I'm gifted. And he'll go play tennis and suck and be like, I'm going to quit, Dad. And I'm like, what made you think that you were just going to be good? Mm-hmm. That's not reality. Like, you need to go into it thinking I'm probably going to be bad, but I will get better. And so I think that's helped me, starting businesses, with this new business that I'm doing now with you, M42. I'm positive that I'm going to have so many setbacks, but they're just setbacks. It's not a failure unless you quit. When you quit, that's when, it won.
I think you also just,
so, yeah.
Based on what you're saying, I think you also have a healthy sense of expectations. You're talking about your oldest son going into sports. If it's tennis, and he is naturally athletic too, so we don't want to discount that. But at the same time, you can take a naturally athletic kid and put him in a completely foreign sport and take somebody who's not maybe as naturally inclined for athletics, who's been doing it for 10 years. And of course, the skill set trumps the athleticism always. But I think what you're talking about is having a healthy sense of expectations, a realistic sense of expectations. But I am curious, with your mindset, are you going into these business ventures, or I know you travel a lot with your family, and we can talk about that too, because that's important. Do you go in with the highest possible hope that you can, or do you temper that a little bit and try to set more realistic expectations? I've always been curious because you hear people say, oh, set these big, hairy, audacious goals. And then other people say, well, no, just set realistic goals that are maybe slightly outside of your comfort zone. And I'm curious what position you would take on that.
That's interesting. I've never really thought about that, honestly, when I'm setting up a business plan. I was talking to some of your guys at this event, kind of telling them some of the stuff we've done, and telling them where we're at. Our business is 100 days old, and I told them we'd sold about half of the Africa hunts, and they're like, "That's insane, that's crazy." And I'm like, "Is it?
Is it? That's what I think too."
I'm like, well, but I also, that's probably personality to where, if I started a lawn care business today and after a year I had 10 accounts, I would consider it a failure. Whereas somebody might think that's so it might be depending on your expectations of yourself and what you think you're capable of. But yeah, I set pretty high standards, but I'm also very realistic that I think if you don't aim high, then you'll hit low. But at the same time, I'm very, understanding and realistic that shit happens and it's going to be a long, I kind of try to outwork my skill set a lot. People think that it comes easy and I get lucky and, they don't see us here, all the time, just putting in the hours. So, I don't know. That's a good question. That's something for me to kind of think about for myself because, I do set some pretty lofty goals and some high expectations, but I don't know what causes me to do that. I just think it's doable. And I'd rather hit a little bit below it than, set low goals. I'm not in this to coast.
You seem to be somebody also though who is willing to let things slide, and I actually really admire you about that because whether it's a personal conversation that you and I have had where maybe another person might feel slighted or take it the wrong way or take it out of context or be offended, your personality seems to be one where, it's okay. Like whatever it is, it's okay. You're quick to forgive, you're quick to forget. And that's, to me, very admirable because so many people get offended quickly, they hold grudges. But from the outside looking in, I think it's partly your perspective of that where you can just let things slide and you're pretty carefree, but you also are not in some aspects that make you able to drive on when things don't go exactly your way.
Yeah, you said a quote this weekend up at your Uprising event that I really loved. And I think I've heard you say it before, but it hit me this time. But it was the one about you'll have to fill in the blank, but it's with a guy who steps into a river and it's not the same river and he's not the same man.
Right.
Is that right? Is that pretty much the gist of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
that's what it
you know,
is.
I think
you know,
that-
whoever said it, I can't think of who said it, but obviously they can say it more
what
eloquently
was-
than you and I can. No
Yeah.
man steps into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man.
Yeah, and I love that, because, I think the reason I am quick to forgive people, and I'm getting a lot better at it as I get older, which I think we all do, is you never know what somebody's going through. It's like, I used to somebody to come in and blow up on me and or slight me and I'd react to that moment and chew them out or ruin the friendship, whatever it was, and later on I'd find out that he's fighting with his wife or his kid's sick and it's like, that wasn't me, that he wasn't mad at me at that moment. He was just going through some shit, which we all are. And I tell people a lot of times, if you want to judge me on who I was at 20, at 40, then you're wrong. I'm not the same person at all, and so I just try to give people more grace. I just have no idea what they're going through, employees, friends, family. And I think, if they do something that's, just downright wrong, I'm very black and white if it's just unethical or it's bad. And then I'll just remove that because I'm old enough to where I don't need drama. I don't need, that kind of stuff in my life. But if it's somebody who just slights me and has a bad day and says, you're an asshole, it's like, hey, maybe I was, and that's fine. Or maybe you're just, projecting on me from something that's going on in your life. And me and Ricky actually got into it last week pretty good. And he blew up on me and left the office, and I texted him and said, hey, man, I don't know what you're going through, but I love you. We're brothers. This is a business. We're going to have brothers fight. But I'm here when you want to come back. I will not leave you. And he came back in the next day crying and says, I'm going through some stuff. And we hugged it out, and I love him. And it wasn't necessary. I had done some things. I'd pushed him a little too hard, which, again, you said I can do. I'm very driven. So I can put some high pressure on people without realizing it. But when he cracks, that's not his fault, necessarily. And to not let him come back in and we hugged it out. And it was a beautiful moment, and now our relationship is stronger. Even though some things were said that if you walked into the room in that moment, you'd be like, these guys are never going to be friends again. Like some things got yelled in the heat of the moment. But it's like, that's not me and Ricky, and so I was quick to say, hey, that was just the moment and let's move on. And now we're stronger because of it. And I think a lot of men don't do that. I think men tend to hold grudges or prideful or all those, and it's like, man, if you can just let down the wall a little bit and say, hey, I was wrong, or, vice versa, you can really get into, you were talking about it with Kip, at the event again, where you guys had a conversation last week that was uncomfortable for you. And when you open yourself up, he's not going to be like, blow you off. He's going to let you in. And then now your relationship's stronger for that. So I don't understand why it comes naturally for me, which I'm grateful for. But I think more people would have deeper, more meaningful lives if they could give people some grace. I know you've gone through some, you're a public persona and people call you out publicly and do some things, and I'm like, name me one person that can judge another person. Really. It's like, okay, you think that you can judge that person. You have no idea. There's hundreds of things that have happened to this person that you have no access to, and to think that you can make a judge off seeing 10% or 20% of it, to me is just arrogant and just not a good way to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we're going to be talking about a lot more during this podcast, but like, as you say that, I think if there's one takeaway up to this point for the guys to hear, it's that. Just let things slide a little bit more. And maybe not slide, but just let it roll off your back. You know, people are having a hard time. I've had this professionally. In fact, over the past couple of years, I've had guys leave and say things, just completely ridiculous things, like hurt, like attempting to hurt, you know, type things. But I've also had a lot of those guys who said those things come back because I'm not going to take that personally. I'm not going to lash out. I'm not going to make it worse. But we also see it in men's personal lives where their girlfriend or their wife might say something or do something they don't like, and rather than give them the benefit of the doubt or work through it because that person is worth going through that with, it's like they end it. You know, if it's somebody you're dating, it's over. If it's a marriage, then you stonewall them for a week. It's ridiculous. And I've had things just even recently where, personally, where it's like there two people are trying to come together, right? And when two people or more try to come together, we all come with our own unique perspectives and experiences and beliefs and baggage and stories about past trauma. And when two people like that get together, of course there's going to be friction. There's going to be challenge. I just see way too many men throwing the towel too soon for something that could be so great if they're willing to work towards it or through those challenging times.
Well, and you know, yesterday, so when I left the event, I drove up because we're an hour from my house, and I gave one of your guys a ride home that I had met. He was,
you did,
it's Trevor, right? So Trevor, I gave him a
Which
ride
was
to the airport.
he was our MVP for the weekend.
Yeah, man, and he got emotional on the ride down. That meant a lot to him. He was really excited about that. You know, he's a young kid. He's 28, trying to figure out where he belongs and what he's doing, and that was, you know. And he says I should have given a speech, and I says, your performance this weekend was the speech. And he's like, wow, thanks for saying that, man. He's like, that means a lot. He says, the whole time I've been thinking I should have stood up and said something. And I says, you said it all weekend by showing up and performing. And he's like, wow, thank you. But anyway, back to my point, we were driving down, and you know, we talked a little bit about you. You know, he says, I guess he's a team leader in the Iron Council. And he says, you know, I know Ryan was going through some stuff. And he says, you know, I questioned things. You know, you question things. It's like, it's natural. You know, it's like Ryan's going, he's my leader. You know, I find out some of these things about his marriage and alcohol. And he says, I questioned things. You know, I questioned it. And he says, I know some people left the Iron Council and said, hey, you know, this isn't the guy for me. And he says, but I stuck it out. And he says, by being here this weekend and spending 4 days raw with Ryan, I'm so glad I did. Because he says, you know, I see posts and I see comments and I see, you know, he says, but I got to see Ryan in these raw moments, and he is a good, powerful person. And you know, it's like, what if he would have quickly reacted to some things and just bailed? And it's like, I think when you just judge somebody and you make a decision and you bail or you just walk away, it's like in any aspect of life, your wife, your friends, you know, your mentors, it's like, give them some grace, give them some time to explain what happened, and then you can make a decision. You know, it's like, like I said, if they keep being an asshole, then you're free to cut them loose. Yeah. But to think that somebody makes a mistake and you just write them off, to me, that is just, that's just immature. Yeah. And so, yeah, I agree.
I mean, the time thing is important, but also just observe what people do. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I think you can tell really quickly about a person when things don't go their way or they make a mistake, whether it's subconscious or deliberate. They do something they shouldn't do. It's like, is this out of character for this person? And if it is, then I think we ought to give that person the benefit of the doubt and maybe even just sit on the sideline. I'm not saying you need to be fully immersed, but sit on the sideline and say, I'm not leaving yet, but show me what you're made of. Like, show me what you're going to do now. And if you see a person who stumbled and fallen, who gets back up, he dusts himself off, he gets back into it, they're willing to admit their mistakes, they change their behavior. You know, there's a scripture there's a scripture that says, by their fruits ye shall know thee. And so if you look at a person and you wonder, is this person a good person? Is this somebody I should follow? Is this person somebody worthy of my time and attention? Look at what they do. Not in the moment necessarily, but over the long haul, because we all slip. But look at what they do over the long haul, and you're going to see this person produces good fruit. You know, I see guys who, for example, I might not know very well personally, but I can see the people that they know and the circle of friends they keep. And I can't help but think I don't know what it is, but there's something about that guy that allows him to keep company with good people. And so I'm willing to look at that and figure out what that is, because I want to create that in my own life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I, you know, that's what Trevor was saying. He says he may have lost some people, but I think he's gaining a lot more because he's showing up, like you're saying, and he's changing. And, you know, I think people can relate to that. But if you don't if you just bail, you know, and hey, he made a mistake, he's not perfect, I thought he was, I'm out, you're missing all of this. And I think this is where the growth happens. You know, we grew up LDS, you know, and I think the best bishops are the ones who've seen some stuff. You know, they're the ones who can relate and say, hey, you know, I'm not perfect either. The ones that have just never had a problem. And you go to them and say, you know, I touched a girl inappropriately, you know, at 18. They're like, well, okay, we got to handle this. And it's like, right. You know.
Were you never like, 18?
Come on, man, now. You know. Yeah, exactly, you know. So I kind of think people are going to start relating, you know, I think not start, but I think people can relate to what you're going through. And it's been good for me to, you know, see how you handle it. You know, not necessarily that you went through it. I hate that as your friend and I wish it never happened. But to see you come out the other side a better person, that's what life's about, you know. Well, and to not give people that grace and
it's hard to acknowledge in the moment that life will get better. You know, we're talking about my divorce, 100%. For example, but you also talked about businesses that have not done well. It's hard in those moments when you're out tens, hundreds of thousands of even millions of dollars to think life will get better. Or you're in the midst of a bankruptcy because of the economy and your choices during that era. Or a marriage that falls apart because you did something that you shouldn't have done, or your behavior over a sustained period of time was not what it should have been. It's really, really difficult in that moment to say, oh, life will get better. But if you stick through it and you learn the lessons, like I can now, and I'm sure you can with your businesses, you can look back and say, actually, as twisted as it might sound, I'm grateful for the hardship. I'm grateful for my personal struggles because I'm pretty satisfied and happy with where I am in life right now. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I imagine you feel pretty good about that 2008, 2009 financial catastrophe for you and your family, because you would not be in the position you are today if it weren't for that.
Yeah, 100%. I always tell people it was the best and worst time of my life. You know, I mean, we lost everything, you know, financially. And the two things that it taught me are you can get your finances back, again, if you know, learn the lesson, and who's around you when, you know, you lose everything financially. You know, that was a big lesson for me. I had a lot of toys and a lot of things, and I had a lot of people around that wanted to come sit in my hot tub and ride my motorcycles and, you know, go on trips with me. And then, you know, I lost everything, and it's like, you know, it was my grandparents, my parents, a few close friends that, you know, weren't in, you know, for necessarily the experiences. And you know, and so, but if I would have just made money, I made quite a bit of money and then lost it. And I always think about this, if I would have just made money and never had that drop, you know, I wouldn't appreciate where I'm at today. You know, I go out to my property now, my cabin in Apple Valley that you've been to, and probably 3 out of 4 times I get emotional driving up the driveway. And I'm like, what, man, you know, why have I got this lump in my throat? And it's like, because this was so hard to get, you know? And so your next business, when it starts working out, or your next relationship, it's just you appreciate, you know, that because you've been alone. You've been there alone, in you know, for months or years. And when you find somebody that, you know, cares about you, it's just a stronger bond because you know what it feels like to be alone. So 100%, you know, you those things are so important. You know, you don't have to go through them. Hopefully you don't have to, but if you do, and you persist and you learn the lessons. You know, I have a few friends who have taken their lives in the dark times. And I think about them often thinking, man, if you would have just come out the other side, you know, there's another sunrise. And man, you know, where would they be today? You know, it's just heartbreaking because they just tapped out. They you know, the official tap. And it breaks my heart because I've never been suicidal, but I've just been in a place where I just saw no hope financially. And I look at it 10 years later and, you know, I've been traveling the world and, you know, I have everything I could ever want pretty much financially. And I just think, gosh, man, just keep fighting.
It's just, I think it's us as human beings, the scarcity mentality where if we lose something, we think life is over, but we don't live like we did 1,000 years ago. For example, if 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, we killed a woolly mammoth and a neighboring tribe came in and wanted it, they would steal our women, they would kill or enslave us, and they would steal our food, and we would die. That's the reality of the situation. But now, you know, you miss your mortgage payment and you can catch up. Or worst case scenario, you miss enough mortgage payments and they take your house, but you can go find other housing. You lose your job, you're going to be hit with some unemployment benefits. They're going to help you get through those tough times to get back on your feet, hopefully. If your wife decides to leave you for whatever reason, you're going to find another woman who's just as, if not greater than, because you learn the lessons. Like, we don't live in a scarcity existence anymore. We did, I think, at one point, but we really don't anymore. Sure. But it's hard to differentiate because of our biological conditioning to differentiate between the neighboring tribe coming in to take our women and kill us versus, hey, you lost your job. That sucks. Now, what are you going to do? Go find another one. It's hard to differentiate, especially when you're in the throes of it.
100%. And I think that's, you know, a testament to you, because I've been on your journey with you through, you know, not the alcoholism necessarily, but I was with you in Hawaii a couple of weeks before, you know, you found out about, you know, your divorce. And so I've kind of been there in the raw moments and all along. And I've been, you know, when we were talking about it in those days, but, you know, you can go left or right, and you went right, you know, you got in shape, you know, just tried to become better, and you did. And that's where I think a lot of people, you know, it's a lot of what you, how you react.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that. So when we went to Hawaii, it was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. That was in June. And then in July, my ex told me that she wanted a divorce. So it's when I forgot about that. But when I think about that timeline, it's also pretty amazing how quickly things can turn. Because I don't know what my mentality was like in Hawaii. It was probably pretty optimistic and fun and enjoyable. And then a month and a half later, my whole world was flipped upside down, which completely changed everything for me. So it is amazing. And I think it's something we as men need to be aware of, that life's going to change like that. Something's going to happen that's going to completely just turn everything around. And your ability to be aware of it, to identify it, to adjust to it is going to be paramount.
Yeah, I think that's the key to everything. You know, most of the businesses that fail are the ones who, you know, gave up. You know, I talk to you a lot of times, and it's like you're consistent and persistent, you know, and I think those two things, as long as you do that, you know, you can't, like we kept saying, you can't control things, but you can influence them. That was a big lesson on this weekend's event, you know, and so, yeah, I agree.
So to shift gears a little bit, Rick, to go back to the business side of things, because I know a lot of guys are interested in that. I know just because we're so close that you have so many different ideas and concepts. And there was a couple of things, I can't remember what they were right offhand. There was a couple of things mentioned this weekend at some of the events and firesides and chats that we did. And I remember thinking, oh, Rick's going to like that, and he's going to want to turn that into a business. That's what went through my mind. It was, oh, you know what it was? It was Jay. It was Jay when he was talking about doing painting pickleball courts. And I'm actually really curious what you thought about, because he presented that, and I couldn't help but look over at you, and I'm like, I know Rick's wheels are turning, and he's thinking about how he can do that here in Southern Utah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I'm kind of, like 10 years ago, 100%. But where I'm at now, financially, and, really my business is, I'm trying to focus on just, I want to do stuff that's fun. And so, 10 years ago, you're 100% right. I was just always looking for something, I whatever it took. But these days, I look for more, self-help, like, adventure, just things like that. So, that one didn't catch me, but
really,
10 years ago, I'd have jumped on it.
Man, I would have put money. I thought a conversation we'd be having this week is, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Like, what do you think? Like, I thought for sure we were going to have this conversation this week. It is interesting because I know you guys travel, you and your wife and your kids travel extensively. I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 months out of the year you're traveling abroad. I think you said the other day that your 3-year-old has been to 30 plus countries, which is crazy from the casual observer. What got you so much into travel? Because there are so many people who want to do that. I don't want to do that to the extent that you do, but I went to Scotland last year. We're going to Africa this year together. We're going to Hawaii, which I know isn't abroad, but still it has some of that feel to it. I love to travel, but what got you guys into that, especially with a family as large as yours? That can be a real challenge.
Yeah, I've always wanted to see the world. Gina didn't have it. Gina never had it. We were sitting, it was New Year's Eve in 2000, I think 15. So going into 16. And I says, hey, we're starting to make a little bit of money. We got some rental properties. Our businesses are doing good. Like, I think I could retire here in a year or so, and she's like, what? And I says, yeah, I think we could go do what we want to do, at least for a certain amount of time. And I says, I'd like to see the world. And she says, I'm good at that. She really didn't have that at all. It never even crossed her mind at the time. She says, it's just never been something that was possible. It was just, we go to Disneyland or we go to Lake Powell. We both grew up poor, and she just never even thought that was a dream, which I think that's where most people fall, is it's just, you're trying to go camping or trying to pay to go to Vegas for the weekend, which I understand. That was me for a long, long time.
Well, but Vegas is even a destination for, we're fortunate enough, we live an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm always blown away when people are like, oh yeah, we're going to Vegas this year. And I'm like, why? Because it's so close and accessible for us, but even that's a big destination for a lot of people.
Oh, it's number one. I mean, I would say it is almost number one. Everywhere we went over the world, everybody asked, where are you from? And I'm like, we're from, Southern Utah. And they're like, where's that? We don't even know what that is. And I'm like, it's 90 minutes from Vegas. And they're like, Vegas? Oh my gosh. And every time. It's just hilarious. So, and Vegas is, got some fun to it. But like you said, the news worn off for us. We live so close that it's just, just traffic and noise now for me. But I just went to her and said, hey, let's go. And luckily, gratefully, she was all in. She's like, that sounds fun. And we bought a one-way ticket to Normandy. We bought it to Paris. The top thing on my list at the time was Normandy, France. And I just love, my heroes are veterans and military like you are. I think those are the heroes, that's why we're free and have all these freedoms. And I wanted to take my 2 little boys at the time there. So we bought a one-way ticket to Paris. And I remember calling my mom saying, I'm going to go for a year or 2. And she laughed. And I says, why are you laughing? And she says, you're going to get the wanderlust, you're going to get the bug. And we went for a couple of years, and I says, we're going to keep going. And minus COVID, it's 7 years we were out. So, I don't know. I talked to some of my buddies and they're like, dude, you were with your wife and kids for 12 months in a row, like 24/7, 24/7. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, that sounds miserable. And yeah, we had our problems. We had there's times road tripping in Europe where you're on the road for thousands of miles where you're going to get at each other's throats. But, that's my world. It's funny because I go to Hawaii with you for a couple weeks each year and I get homesick.
Of course.
Towards the end, I'm like, I miss my boys. I miss my wife, I'm done here. And when I'm out with my wife and kids, I never get homesick. It just doesn't happen. I miss my parents a little bit. That's the one thing, my grandparents before they passed. But I can be in Italy in a little town, in Amalfi, in a little Airbnb, and my little boys are playing on the deck, and I'm sitting there, drinking limoncello with my wife, and all's right in the world. And that's just my happy place. So, we all have things. I have buddies who love being at work. They love golfing. They love, and that's what I think is beautiful about this world. And that's a lot like what we're trying to do with M42 Adventures is give people, let them go travel, let them go to Africa. You don't have to hunt. Come over and just take pictures and, go to the orphanage and fly in a helicopter or, come ride a horse at one of our events. You never know what is going to grab you. It's like going to your event this weekend. It's like you did shooting, you did archery, you did a cooking class, you did jujitsu, and there's probably guys there that were like, including me, the PT was just hard for me. It was just not a big exerciser, but I loved the jujitsu. It's like running down a road I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy doing push-ups. But jujitsu is like, oh, that could be my physical outlet, and so that's where I tell everybody, it's like, man, there's, what is it, Baskin Robbins 32 flavors?
31.
There's a reason there's 32 flavors.
31.
Is it?
Come on.
Sorry.
Jeez.
Dang it.
Don't mess with Baskin Robbins.
Yeah. And but there's a reason there's 31 flavors, It's like, not everybody loves chocolate and vanilla, and that's what's beautiful about life. But I think a lot of people, they don't go try all the flavors, they don't experience a lot of stuff either because of the finances or whatever, and I think if you can go try as much as you can, you get, obviously one life. It's on my, it's on my wall here. So I can move it over, but, I got that little ticket on my wall and it says one life, one per customer. And, that's how I live. And that's how I've tried to live my whole life. Even when I didn't have money, we just tried to go do whatever we could at that time, whether it was camping or whatever. But yeah, man, I don't know. Travel it just is my jam. I just love it. I love meeting new people. I love seeing new places. I love, I hear a lot of people that are like, man, you flew to Australia? That's like 17 hours. And I'm like, dude, you know what? 100 years ago, it was like a 3-month boat ride.
And you probably you had a 50% chance of dying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like now you sit in a chair and you watch a movie and drink a Diet Coke. And it's like, I just think we live in a time where travel is so easy. And why not?
Right.
It changes you. It's literally changed me as a person. And I think that's also what's helped me with my compassion is, you meet some of these, you go to Bali and you're seeing a little girl playing with a doll that has one leg, and how can you not come home and feel blessed and grateful? And, and so it's just, I don't know. You went to Costa Rica with me for 10 days. We had a great time.
Oh, it was one of my favorite trips. I think it probably,
that's awesome. I love that.
It probably is in the top. It's in the top 2 or 3 favorite trips, and that's in the throes of me going through a divorce, even, and it was still, just the time with the kids and all of the different experiences and cultures I hadn't seen before. Actually, one of the funnest parts of that trip was I think we were in the fitness competition at that point, right, with you and me and some friends.
Yeah.
So
you would go lift every day.
Every morning, me and my oldest son would go find a gym. We went to 3 different gyms while we were there, but we'd go find a gym and we would go work out. In fact, one morning I did an hour-long workout I don't know if you know this, I did an hour-long workout in the bathroom of the hotel we were in.
I do remember that.
But
I was up in the cloud forest. I remember.
That's right.
Yeah, you telling me, and I'm like, bro.
Yeah, it was in the bathroom. I was doing like burpees and push-ups and air squats, and I did like 10 rounds. But the coolest part of that was going to the gyms and just rubbing shoulders with the locals a little bit. Obviously I didn't speak the language, but we were all there at the gym together, and we could communicate to the degree that we needed to. It was so much fun, that part of it. I love that part of it.
And that's it for me, man. It's just, that's what we do. We go and we try to fish with people. We try to, we hit up the gyms too as well. Not as much as you guys, but parks. We go to a lot of parks with the kids, and you just kind of find what, like I said, travel can be different for somebody. Some people want to go travel and lay on the beach. You saw how I traveled. We went there for 10 days. We did a lot of activities, a couple down days, but I like zip lining, and I like, going to the hot springs and just, going out and experiencing it. And I don't know, man, that was a little glimpse into what I do, and you had a good time. So, I think a lot of it too is, in the beginning it was a little stressful because I didn't know even how to do it. I didn't have a travel agent. I planned everything, the language barriers, again, like starting a business. A lot of people stay home. I remember being in Carcassonne, France, and my secretary at the time called me, asked me some questions. I'd been gone about 3 months at the time, and she called me about some accounting things, and she says, "What are you doing?" And I says, "I'm looking for milk for my baby." He was 2 at the time, and I says, he wants a bottle, and we're trying to find some milk, and I can't find milk. Their milk over there, most of their milk is, I don't know what the word is, but it's where it's been superheated, so it's on the shelf in boxes, not in refrigerators.
Not pasteurized is something different.
It's not pasteurized.
Interesting.
It's because they don't like to have a lot of refrigeration in their grocery stores. They say, you guys, it's weird, but our grocery stores, you have aisles and aisles of refrigeration and freezers, and over there they don't because of the power bill, and so so a lot of their milk's, superheated, so it'll last on the shelf, and it tastes funny to us, right? Because we've never had it, and my little 2-year-old didn't like it. And I says, I've been walking around for an hour. I've gone to 3 different stores trying to find pasteurized milk, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I could never do that." She's like that. She says, "I'm having a panic attack
stressful. Yeah.
right now talking to you," and I'm like, "It's fine," and I'm like, "He's not going to die," and so I think that's again the lesson of business or anything you do in life. I planned it out as much as I could. I went there with extra money in case it didn't work out, but at the time, it was like, okay, I'm 80% there. It's time to jump. And, hopefully it all works out. And, we talked a lot about at your retreat, how people what's the word? You make the fears or the problems way bigger.
Just exaggerate it, right?
Exaggerate it. Yeah. And then once you do it, it's never usually as bad as what you had in your mind. Chris was talking a lot about that. And that's true. It's like, yeah, we had some problems, whatever, but that's part of the adventure. That's the story I'm telling on a podcast. It's like, that's the one that stood out, was me trying to find milk. And that, to me, life's the adventure, and, try not to get caught up in the fear of it, but the adventure part of it. Put a spin on it and just say, hey, this is exciting. This is going to be a story to tell.
Yeah, we could go on and on about stories. I was telling somebody about our Hawaiian goat story the other day, and like you and I could go on and on about our stories. But the other thing that stood out as you were telling that story about the milk is, I think a lot of guys, they're concerned with, well, I don't know what I would do if fill in the blank. So I don't know what I would do to get my first customer. I don't know what I would do if I was in that relationship and she wanted out or we had a hard time. I don't know what I would do if I went on vacation and I couldn't find milk for the baby, or the hotel we were going to stay at double booked the rooms, and so now we don't have a place to stay. It's like, you'll figure that shit out. Like, I wish more men had that mentality of, yeah, I don't know either, And what I do know is that it's not going to go according to plan, but we'll figure it out. You know, you take this weekend and we had a 3.5 day schedule down to the minute. You saw it. Here's what we're going to do.
It was amazing. Yeah,
We were probably 65% on that for the weekend. Most guys don't even know. And I mentioned that towards the end. I said, you wouldn't even know that we were off because we have a guy like Chris Gatchko, who's an event coordinator. We put the right people in the right places. And even the things that don't go according to plan, like we had Ironman and we needed 70 bags of ice. And we had Ironman that were blocking the roads to the convenience store that we were going to go to in the morning to get ice. So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, figure that shit out because it's got to happen. You made a promise. You made a commitment. There's some extenuating circumstances we didn't prepare for. But have some faith that as a human being, you're capable of figuring some things out on the fly in the moment. And I think you'll be more likely to take risks and go on some of these adventures.
Yeah, there was a couple times, you know, I've got my wife and 2 little boys for most of my travels for 5 years. You know, my 3-year-old the last couple. You know, there was a couple times where we slept in the car. You know, I remember being in Cinque Terre, trying to find an Airbnb. Couldn't find it, got there late. The language barrier just wasn't working.
Where is that?
And
Where did you say it
I
was?
just said, hey, Italy.
Oh, Italy.
Cinque
Okay.
Terre.
Okay.
So, and just bad reception. And I'm like, okay, we're sleeping. And I'm 6'5", you know, and I had a little car, you know me, I'm cheap with gas mileage. And I knew we were going to road trip the U.S. or Europe for 6 months. And so I was like, you know, we're going to get a cheap car. And so it was small. It was new, it was brand new, but it was small. And I look at Gina and I'm like, we're sleeping in the car tonight, you know? And she's like, okay. And she was just good with it. The boys, but again, we get home to grandma and grandpa and my boys are like, yeah, we slept in the car. It was crazy, you know, like, you know.
You
but
saw
that's
the
what they
Sistine
remember.
Chapel
So
and you remember sleeping in the car? Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like going to Costa Rica. You know, our boys remember catching crabs. They don't, you know, it's like, well, don't you remember the zip lines or some of the highlights that we think that they would like? But, you know, and that's why that's everybody says, how do you travel with kids? You know, and I'm like, I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly, because the Sistine Chapel's nice. I've been there. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's, you know, it is what it is. But my highlights are being in parks, you know, kicking a soccer ball or throwing a football or, you know, catching my kid at the bottom of a slide. That is my highlights. You know, the sights are what move you down the road, but it's the in between, you know, jumping on the beds, you know, and you know, one of the funniest things is in Costa Rica when I walked into your room. What were you guys playing? Hide and seek?
Yeah.
What was that?
We were playing hide and seek in the room, and so the kids were like under the beds. Like Brecken crawled up. There was a closet
on a shelf.
Like
or
he
something.
crawled up in. If you open the closet, it had shelving in there, and he got in the closet and climbed up like on the shelf, and he was tucked behind some spare blankets. It was like I don't think they found him.
That's
yeah,
what
it was hilarious.
Yeah, he's a big boy too, man. He's big boy, and I come walking in, and you know, but that's what Castle and Hayes. They're like, we want to go on a trip with the Micklers again, you know, and play hide and seek in the room, and I'm like. And so, you know, yeah, but I just feel like people try to control. Well, again, we talked a lot about that, you know, and you try to, you know, set yourself up for as much as success as you can. But man, that's just not, you're going to get a flat tire, you know, but if you're prepared and you're ready for it, you have a spare, or, you know, you're just, you know, proactive, not reactive. And I think that in business, in life, just increases your chances of success. If you're driving down the road and you don't have a spare tire, it's going to be a lot harder when you get a flat. But if you plan and you plan accordingly and you have a spare, when you get that flat, it's going to be an inconvenience, but you just change the tire, you're out a couple hours and you move on. And so anybody going into business, obviously you want to, you know, set the odds in your favor. And a big thing for me is mentors. You know, I think that's probably, I was trying to think what the number one thing for me, and it's people like you, you know, that are out ahead leading the charge. And, you know, I look at it like cheat codes, you know, the books you've written, other books that have been written, you know, and I encourage people to, just get knowledge and get people that are, ahead of you in the race. I just did a podcast for M42 last week with Bryce Jones, and he's a triathlon runner. And, he gave me, 2 or 3 dozen tips that for me to learn would have taken what he took 20 years. Mm-hmm. But I got to learn it in an hour and a half because he told me what to look for, and so you can find these people that have traveled, and, there's all these Instagram accounts and all these books on everything pretty much that I'm starting M42 Adventures with you. I don't know how to saddle a horse. I don't know how to, but I know how to find the people who know how to saddle a horse, that have horses, and then I bring them and they teach me and the others. If I tried to start M42 Adventures and run the shooting school and run the fly fishing school and run all the events we're doing, it would take me 20 years and be a nightmare.
Right.
But I find people that are, specialists in their fields, like your cooking class on Saturday night. Imagine you up there teaching that.
Yeah, no way I could do that.
Yeah.
It'd be disgusting. Or the medical class. It's like, I don't.
100%.
Everybody I taught would basically kill the person they're trying to save. If it were me trying to do
100%. Me too. And so you bring in people, and I don't know why people don't realize that. It's common sense when you're trying to learn CPR, you go to a CPR class. But when it's like, I want to run a business, it's like, well, I'll just start it. And it's like, no, find somebody who started a business. Go talk to them. Most people, Trevor, Trevor, when he got out of my car, he says, thanks for the ride. And I says, no problem. And he says, when you offered to take somebody to town, I thought, I want to ride with him.
He jumped on it.
Because he started he says he started a lot of businesses. And if I could spend an extra hour with you, and we talked a lot about business and his future plans. And, everybody above you is usually trying to pull you up, and the ones that are below you are trying to pull you down. So get people above you and reach out to them. 9 out of 10 will try to help you that I've ever found. And, I think that's the biggest thing that separates success and failure is learning from others. If you had to jump in, imagine, all the things in your life, if you had to just learn them, but if you go to school, you have coaches, you have teachers, you have parents, all trying to teach you stuff faster and better ways than they did it so that you can win that game or, pass that class or start that business. And I think it's so funny to me that after high school, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's like 90% of people after high school don't read a book.
That's actually when I started reading. I never read a book in high school. I didn't start reading until I was out of high school.
Yeah, me too. And that's yeah. And I'm with you on that one. But that's the funny thing to me is people just stop, and think, oh, I've graduated, and I know everything I'm ever going to know, and now I'm going to go work at this job and just run it out and live on my life on replay and on the hamster wheel. And it's like, man, if you read a couple books and go to a couple of events, that your event up there was 25 men that are trying to improve themselves, that are trying to, there's tons there that are highly successful. And so that's what events are about for me. I love the shooting. I love the paramedic stuff. I don't like the PT training, I found out.
Make it harder for you
but
next year.
But I just love the conversations, and I think a lot of people think, what's the price of the ticket? What am I getting? And it's like, I'm getting to go, shoot a gun or learn CPR, which is obviously valuable, but it's the relationships that can change your life. Learning how to shoot a gun can change your life in a couple instances, but making 4 or 5 of the connections that you make at these events can change your trajectory, also.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk just briefly about M42 and what I was thinking about as we'd have this conversation is it's interesting to me now where you've created this life of travel, but now you're able to create, in addition to that, a business. And part of the reason I'm so excited about it too is that I love to hunt. Anybody who's listening to the podcast for any amount of time knows that I love to hunt. And so I'm traveling anyways. I'm going to do these things anyways. But man, if we can create an opportunity to have a business that's centered around outdoor experiences where I get to do the things I'm going to do anyways, but now we get to invite other people who want to learn how to hunt, who want to learn how to fly fish or go horseback riding or travel to Costa Rica and do a surfing school or a weekend down there. Man, I love the fact that there's a lot of congruency between you and me, our own personal desires and pursuits, and now creating a business that allows people the same opportunities that, man, we wish we would have had that cheat code when we started doing these things.
Yeah, 100%. I tell everybody, it's self-serving. I gratefully, for now, because shit can change, but for now, I don't have to work. I don't need a job. We were going to continue traveling. We've hit most of our highlights that we want, even multiple times, and, my kids want to play football. They want a dog. They've never been to school. My 12-year-olds never had a full year of school. And I said, I was talking to my dad. My dad says, they've sacrificed a lot for you. Now you need to sacrifice for them. And so that's where we're at is, we're coming home, not because I'm done, but because my boys want something and they've given, years of their life for me. And so I'm going to do that. So we came home, we got a little boxer puppy. We put him in football and school and they're enjoying it. And so I thought, well, if I'm home, I need to do something. I have companies that I can go back to and be the CEO of and make great money. But I don't want to go run a cabinet, company. I don't want to run a flooring store. And so I've had this idea for a while, and that's when I called you a few months ago when I was in Scotland and said, hey, I have this idea. And you said, I love it. Let's do it. And yeah, it's basically just, I want to learn these things. It's not, I want to learn how to, work with the horse and work, fly fish. And so we had an event a week ago up at my parents' 50-acre ranch in Utah. We had 33 people attend. And we did, a couple things you did. We did, firearm training, archery training, fly fishing classes, UTVs. We brought in 4 state-of-the-art UTVs, side-by-sides. Brought in half a dozen horses. Brought in 6 different chefs that taught outdoor cooking. We brought in EMT from a local town here that taught CPR and safety. We had a hiking class, taught people how to pack and what to wear. And so, yeah, we brought people in. We did ice baths, some stuff like that. And basically it's just trying to get people who don't have the opportunity to, experience one or all of these things. And it was amazing, man. We did the event. It's not just men, this is men, women, children. We had single women, we had single men, we had families that brought kids. One family brought a 3-year-old, first time riding a horse around, and he just didn't want to get off it. He would have rode that horse for all 3 days. It was something that was. I got a text after, and actually Ricky, he's here in the studio with me on my end, and he texted me after and said, "Dude, that was my daughter's." Top 5 days of her life. And she's, how old is she? 14 years old. And that was one of the top 5 days of her life. She took the fly fishing class, got a fly pole and caught a, what was it? Couple pound rainbow trout with a fly pole.
20 inches.
20 inch rainbow trout
awesome.
with a fly pole. And then she took it over to the fire and cooked it on the fire. And she gutted it. He's filling me in. She gutted it, and it changed her. It literally just was a life-changing experience for her. And that's the concept, is to educate people on, all things. It's not just hunting, like you said. We're gonna expand next year into multiple categories, and then have them experience it. I think we talked a lot about that at your event this weekend, where a lot of people these days are educating. They're reading the books. They're going to the seminars. Or listening to the podcasts. That's fine, but do something. Sign up for the retreat, sign up for the hunt, sign up for the mountain biking, trip with your buddies. Go hike a mountain. Go buy a bow and shoot it. It doesn't have to be through us. I don't care, but I just want to get people out there and having an adventure. And then you'll level up. So ours is educate, experience, and evolve. And it's education, learn about it, go out and do it, actually do it, shoot the bow, fire the gun, ride the horse, drive the UTV. And when you go home, you can tell people, hey, this weekend or this event, I shot a gun for the first time.
Yeah.
Or I learned how to shoot a gun better. We had a firearm trainer there that's been in the military, served 2 tours in I think, I don't know if it was Iraq, but I mean, he taught me I've shot guns my whole life, and I learned 3 or 4 different things that, So yeah, it's going to be amazing, man. I'm excited. It's going to hopefully grow from this, 3-day events where you get to come and spend, half a day with horses, half a day with, side by sides, to, 3 and 4 day events next year where it's, a 3 or 4 day horse ride. You go up into the mountains. I mean, imagine how cool that would be, man. Literally, like I've never done it. So imagine you, Brecken and Eli, and me and Castle and Hayes sign up for this event. We show up at the bottom of Pine Valley Mountain in New Harmony. You get your horse. You're introduced to your horse. You get your sleeping bag. You tie it on your horse. You put your food in your saddlebags. You load this horse up. You climb on, and we head up into the mountains for 3 nights.
Yeah.
And we just move around and set up camp like that. That to me just sounds like a blast. And we're going to do that with UTVs. We're going to do that with hiking. We're going to have mountain biking events next year, snowboarding, Costa Rica, like you said, surfing. And it's just an adventure. That's all I want. I want to do things that are exciting. And it was funny, I got a text from my sister last week. And she said, let me see if I can find it. It was actually pretty cool. She said, hey, are all the events going to be in New Harmony at Mom and Dad's? And I said, no, they're going to be, I have, my property, Ryan. I got 40 acres by Zion.
Yeah.
And she said, that's awesome. And she said, so proud of you. I know you'll have great success. And I said, should be fun. If nothing else, we'll see. Love you. And she put, true, but whatever you do, you're all in, and that's admirable. A little emotional. But, it's like, go for it, man. Live your adventure.
Yeah.
Just go all in, give her hell. It may not work out, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't start because I'm the same way. I think I go home to Gina and I'm like, man, this one's kind of over my head. Podcasts and events and trying, running that event last week, as you just got done yesterday, is exhausting mentally. And I go home to my wife, I'm like, this is intimidating. I know cabinets, I know flooring, I know woodwork. This one's out of my wheelhouse. And what if I fail? People are going to judge me. And it's like, yep, they are. I don't care.
That's it. Yeah.
If I got to go to Africa if I get to go to Africa this year with Ryan and his son and my mom and dad, and it ends after that, well, that's one more adventure that I got to do because I tried. And I'm not going to look at, I have plans and I have expectations, but if something happens and those change, then at least I started. The number one regret we have, it's proven, the number one regret on your deathbed is not trying things, living somebody else's version of your life and not doing what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we know that, if they've interviewed thousands of people who are dying and that's the words they say, why are you not trying the shit you want to do? Why are you not living your life? It's just unbelievable to me. Like, please, if you listen to nothing else in this podcast, live your life. Don't live somebody else's version of it. That is their life. You're giving them you. And that's, you don't have you to give. You get one life, one chance at this. It's not a video game where you respawn and try again, man. It's, and I think if people tried to do more adventures and tried to, it doesn't have to be, jumping out of an airplane. It can be, going to the gym or just talking to people more in public and try to make some more friends or whatever you're uncomfortable with. Just try to get outside your comfort zone, find mentors, and find your adventure, find your purpose, and your life will be better for it. Your kids' lives, your wives' lives, your husband's lives, whoever you are. And that's what we're trying to facilitate. We're trying, like I said, it was a huge success. I have like 20 text messages from people saying, I'm buying a bow now. I'm going to buy a gun. I'm going to, I love working with horses. Let me know when your horse event next year. I want to do the 4-day horse event,
Well, Rick, why don't you let the guys know where to find more about it so they know how to connect and learn more about what events there are? Because I think they'd be really interested in seeing what's available and how they can get signed up.
Yeah, so you go to m42adventures.com and everything's on there. You can go look at the events and the experience. We're calling them experiences. There's the Africa hunt this year. We're launching with that, and then we got 2 events this fall, 2 more experiences at my parents' cabin and ranch in Utah. We're on all social media, so M42 Adventures on Facebook. I don't even know them all. Facebook, Instagram. I think we're on Twitter, TikTok, whatever.
All the
those
places.
We have a podcast. Yeah. I'm not even on a couple of them, but we are. The podcast we just launched last week. We've got 3 episodes up. You were one of them. And then my personal, One Life So Live, onelife.solive is my personal Instagram. You're welcome to follow along on my personal journey with this. But that's how you can reach out. Ryan's going to Africa. You're going to be a headliner in Africa August, 5th to the 11th?
That's the date I'll be there. Yeah. We'll sync everything up so the guys know where to go and how to find it all. Rick, I really appreciate you, brother. It's great to have you on the podcast. Obviously, we talk a lot more than just this podcast, but guys, if you're interested, I'm telling you what, like Rick knows how to travel. I do know that. And we know how to put on good events. So if you can make it and want to attend, join us, because I think this is an integral part of life and might add a new dimension to what you've been missing in your life. Rick, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining me today.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks, Ray. Have a good day, man.